Republican lawmakers are introducing a bill to crack down on the use of abortion pills. The legislation would allow lawsuits to target anyone who makes, mails, delivers, prescribes, or distributes abortion pills. It would also allow people to file a wrongful death lawsuit if the medication results in the harm or death of a fetus or the mother. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News contributor Jessica Levinson to talk about it. So, Jessica, it's already illegal to mail abortion-inducing drugs in Texas. What would this change?
So this would essentially expand a lot of the restrictions that are already in place. Texas is already a very restrictive state when it comes to access to abortion. This would go a step further. It would continue Texas's theme of allowing private individuals to enforce these laws. So basically, it continues or expands a private right of action, but it also goes, Vlad, kind of one concentric circle out where the bill would allow people to sue others involved in the manufacture or sale of mifepristone and mifepristol, the two so-called abortion pills, in other states, even where there are shield laws. So it arguably tries to go outside of Texas and target people who are actually mailing and or engaging in telehealth appointments with women who are outside of Texas.
So that is the national implication.
That is a national implication, and there are plenty of legal questions about whether or not a state can do that, can say, we're going to punish people who were otherwise subject to these so-called shield laws. I'm talking to you from California. We have one of those shield laws where we essentially try and protect providers who prescribe abortion pills, and those pills eventually will end up in states sometimes where abortion is illegal. So there's a lot of implications about whether or not the reach of this particular bill would in fact be legal.
All right, so there's already a wrongful death lawsuit that's been filed. Tell me about that.
There's a wrongful death lawsuit that's been filed by a woman who claims that the father of her child essentially spiked hot chocolate and unknowingly gave her an abortion pill. And she's suing under the existing law, which I think is an emphasis of actually how strong that particular law is. Generally speaking, when we're talking about who somebody sues, we're talking about the person who is providing abortion services. Maybe it's the person who's facilitating mailing those services. In this case, the lawsuit involves but doesn't specifically name, I believe, a company in the Netherlands who provides telehealth for some women, sends the abortion medication into a state where it is permissible, and then the abortion medication is moved into a state where sometimes it is not.
All right. Let me ask you, Jessica, since I have you, we've been reporting on that Texas State House that has failed to reach a quorum because of redistricting. Could this impact this bill?
Certainly they need a quorum in order to pass. I believe that yesterday they were able to reach a procedural threshold. I will say you had a fascinating conversation just now about redistricting, and you're emphasizing, of course, how important it is not just to have enough voters, enough lawmakers to vote on redistricting, but how that has a cascading impact potentially on other issues as well. And of course, again, I'm talking to you from California. Now we're having conversations about whether or not to suspend our independent redistricting commission and try and so-called retaliate by drawing House district lines that could have more Democratic members.
Excellent points as always, my friend. Thank you, Jessica Levinson. Appreciate it.